My name is Amanda Bennett. I'm 41, and the last time my family saw me, they thought I was sleeping on park benches and begging for change. That was 3 years ago, at my grandmother's funeral. I'd driven 12 hours from Fort Mee in civilian clothes, jeans with holes, an oversized hoodie, and sneakers that have seen better days. Not because I couldn't afford better, but because I'd learned that blending in was survival. My family didn't need to know that those shabby clothes cost more than most people's monthly rent, or that they were specifically designed to look unremarkable while concealing advanced surveillance equipment. The funeral had been a nightmare. My sister Emma, golden child and real estate attorney, had made sure everyone knew about my situation. Amanda's been struggling. She'd whispered to the aunts and uncles loud enough for me to hear. Lost her job at that computer place. Been couch surfing ever since. We've tried to help, but you know how pride is. My mother had nodded sympathetically, playing the part of the concerned parent. We keep offering her money, but she won't take it. Living in her car, last I heard. I'd said nothing. Let them think what they wanted. In my line of work, family thinking you're a failure was actually perfect cover. The truth was I'd been recruited by the NSA, straight out of MIT. Cyber operations specialists, level 15. For the past 18 years, I'd been tracking international cyber threats, dismantling terrorist networks, and occasionally preventing small wars that the public would never hear about. My security clearance was so high that most of my colleagues didn't know my real name. But my family, they thought I'd flamed out after college, bounced between dead-end jobs, and finally hit rock bottom. It started in my senior year when I'd suddenly become distant, stopped talking about my computer science projects, and declined every family invitation. I couldn't tell them I'd been recruited during my sophomore year, that I'd spent 2 years in preliminary training, or that my senior project was actually a classified operation to infiltrate a Russian hacking collective. When I graduated, instead of the big tech job they expected, I told them I was consulting. When pressed for details, I'd become vague, evasive. The lies compounded. Missed holidays became work troubles. Long deployments became trying to get back on my feet. My inability to maintain relationships because dating someone who can't tell you their real job title is complicated became evidence of my personal failures. Emma, meanwhile, had sailed through law school, married her college boyfriend, a orthopedic surgeon, naturally bought a house in the suburbs, and produced 2 perfect children who played violin and spoke French. At every family gathering, she'd managed to make my absence the centerpiece of conversation. Amanda was supposed to be the smart one. She'd tell people, full ride to MIT, graduated summa cum laude. We all thought she'd be running Google by now. Just goes to show you, you never really know people. The irony was suffocating. While Emma was handling property disputes and divorce settlements, I was literally preventing nuclear incidents. While she was worried about her lawn, I was dismantling cyber attacks that could have collapsed the power grid. But I couldn't say any of that. So I let them think I'd wasted my potential. The breaking point came when Emma decided to get married for the second time. Her first marriage had imploded when she'd had an affair with a client, something the family had managed to spin as growing apart and finding her true love. Dr. David Richardson was everything her first husband wasn't. Older, richer, more established, a cardiovascular surgeon with a practice in Manhattan and a summer house in the Hamptons. The engagement party was being held at the Mandarin Oriental. When the invitation arrived at my apartment, forwarded through 3 addresses for security reasons, I almost threw it away. Black tie registry at Tiffany & Cartier, the kind of event where Emma could show off her new life while I played the role of the disappointing sister. But something made me keep the invitation. Maybe it was the handwritten note Emma had added at the bottom. Amanda, I know things have been hard for you, but family is family. Please try to clean up and come. David's family will be there, and I'd like them to think we're normal. Clean up, as if I was something dirty that needed to be sanitized before being presented to polite society. I looked at my calendar. I was between operations, technically on leave after spending 6 months deep cover in Eastern Europe, tracking a cryptocurrency laundering scheme that financed terrorism. The debrief had been brutal, the psychological evaluation longer. My handler had suggested I take some time to reconnect with civilian life. Maybe this was exactly what I needed. IRS VPDs. But I didn't tell Emma I was coming. Let it be a surprise. The Mandarin Oriental's ballroom was exactly what you'd expect from Emma. Tasteful, expensive, designed to impress. Crystal chandeliers, white orchids, waiters in black tie, serving champagne that cost more per bottle than most people made in a week. Emma had outdone herself. I arrived 40 minutes late, wearing the same jeans and hoodie from the funeral. I'd even dirtied them up a little, added some strategic stains. My hair was unwashed, pulled back in a messy ponytail. I looked exactly like what they expected. The family disappointment cleaned up just enough to get past the door. The hostess at the entrance hesitated when she saw me. "I'm sorry, this is a private event. I'm Emma's sister," I said quietly. "Amanda Bennett." She checked her list, frowned, and reluctantly handed me a name tag. I could see her mentally calculating how to handle the situation diplomatically. The ballroom went quiet when I walked in. Not completely. There were about 60 people there, but quiet enough. Emma was holding court near the bar, David's arm around her waist, telling some story that had everyone laughing. She was wearing a cocktail dress that probably cost more than some people's cars, her engagement ring catching the light like a small sun. She saw me, and her face went through several emotions quickly: surprise, embarrassment, annoyance, and finally, resignation. "Amanda," she called out, her voice bright and artificial. "Everyone, this is my sister, Amanda. She's been going through a tough time, but she made it." The group around her smiled politely, the way people do when they encounter something uncomfortable at a social function. I could see the calculations in their eyes, the quick assessments. Emma's sister, clearly struggling, probably here for the free food and hoping for a handout. David's parents were there, distinguished, wealthy, the kind of people who smeared in Martha's Vineyard and had opinions about wine. His mother, Mrs. Richardson, gave me a look that could have flashed frozen water. "How lovely that you could join us," she said, her voice dripping with false warmth. "Emma tells us you work with computers." "Something like that," I said. "And you're currently between positions." This from David's father, a retired federal judge who clearly didn't approve of his son's new sister-in-law's family situation. "You could say that." Emma jumped in quickly. "Amanda's been trying to get back on her feet. It's been a challenging few years, haven't they, Rush?" I nodded. "Very challenging." The conversation moved on, but I could feel the judgment radiating from David's family. Emma kept shooting me looks, probably wondering if I was going to embarrass her further. My mother appeared at some point, giving me a hug that felt more like a restraint. "Honey, I'm so glad you're here," she whispered. "But maybe we could have talked about your outfit." I was getting another drink when I overheard the conversation that changed everything. David's mother was talking to Emma near the windows, their voices low, but not low enough. "She seems very troubled," Mrs. Richardson was saying. "I hope she's not going to be a problem." "Oh no, she won't be," Emma replied quickly. "She's harmless. Just never really figured out how to be an adult. You know, all that intelligence, but no common sense. She peaked in college, and she's been homeless on and off. She won't take help, which makes it worse. Pride, I think, or maybe shame. David thinks she might be using drugs, but we're not sure." My blood went cold. David thought I was using drugs. "Well," Mrs. Richardson said, "at least she's not asking for money tonight." Emma laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Oh, she will. Give it time. She always does, eventually." The whole family's gotten used to it. Amanda shows up, plays the victim, guilts everyone into feeling sorry for her, then disappears for 6 months. Rinse and repeat. I stood there holding my drink, feeling something crack inside my chest. Not heartbreak. I was past that. Something colder, more final. "The sad thing is," Emma continued, "she really was brilliant. Full scholarship to MIT, graduated, at the top of her class. We all thought she'd change the world. Instead, she can't even change her clothes." Mrs. Richardson made a sympathetic clucking sound. "Sometimes the smartest people are the least equipped for real life." Exactly. All theory, no practice. She spent so much time with computers. I don't think she ever learned how to talk to people, how to function in the real world. I finished my drink and walked away before I heard any more. The rest of the party passed in a blur. I smiled when spoken to, nodded at the right moments, played the part they expected. The family disappointment, grateful to be included, trying not to be too much of an embarrassment. But inside, I was making calculations. 2 weeks later, Emma called me. She'd gotten my number from our mother, who'd gotten it from the forwarding service I used for family contact. "Amanda, I wanted to thank you for coming to the engagement party," she said, her voice carefully modulated. "I know it wasn't easy. For you, it was fine." Good. Listen, I wanted to give you a heads up. David and I are getting married next month. Small ceremony, just immediate family. I know you probably can't afford to travel to the Hamptons, and honestly, it's going to be very intimate, so maybe it's better if I'll be there," I said. There was a pause. "Amanda, it's really just going to be close family, and David's parents will be there. And after the engagement party, They're a little concerned about me embarrassing you. Another pause, longer this time. It's not that. It's just, could you maybe try to dress appropriately and maybe, I don't know, shower. I love you, but first impressions matter. And I'll be there, I repeated and hung up. I didn't get an official invitation. I found out the details through my mother, who seemed torn between wanting me there and worrying about what I might do. It's at David's family estate, she told me over the phone. Very fancy oceanfront. Amanda, honey, maybe this isn't the right time. You could visit Emma after the honeymoon, when things settle down. I want to see my sister get married. I know, but look, Emma's nervous. This is important to her. David's family has money connections. She doesn't want anything to go wrong. What could go wrong? My mother sighed. You know what I mean. I knew exactly what she meant. The Richardson estate in East Hampton was everything I expected. Sprawling, manicured, designed to demonstrate wealth and taste. The wedding was being held on the back lawn overlooking the ocean. White chairs arranged in neat rows. An arch of white roses. A string quartet playing something classical and expensive. I arrived just as the guests were taking their seats. Same outfit as the engagement party, maybe a little more worn. I'd even added a small tear to the sleeve of my hoodie. The security guard at the gate had looked at me skeptically until I gave him Emma's name, and he found me on some kind of supplemental list. The guest list was small, maybe 40 people. David's family and friends, all looking like they'd stepped out of a Ralph Lauren catalogue. Emma's side was smaller. Our parents, a few aunts and uncles, some friends from law school. I was clearly the anomaly. I took a seat in the back row on Emma's side. The woman next to me, one of David's aunts, I think, gave me a look of concern, as if I might be lost. Are you with the bride or groom? She whispered. Bride's sister. Her eyebrows went up, almost imperceptibly. Oh, the ceremony was beautiful. I'll give Emma that. She looked stunning in a dress that probably cost more than most people's cars. David was handsome in his tuxedo, every inch. The successful surgeon marrying the successful attorney, the perfect power couple. I watched from the back row, invisible in my shabby clothes, as my sister married into a world that would never accept someone like me. The reception was held under a white tent on the same lawn. Open bar, 7-course dinner, band from New York, everything first class. I sat at the family table between my parents, trying to be as unobtrusive as possible. But Emma's new in-laws were watching me. I could feel their eyes, their judgment. The poor relation, cleaned up just enough for the occasion, but still clearly a problem. During the soup course, David's father leaned over to my mother. Your daughter seems to be doing better, he said, his voice carrying just enough to be heard by half the table. Oh yes, my mother replied, grateful for what she perceived as kindness. Amanda's been trying very hard lately. And what is it she does for work now? The question hung in the air like a grenade with the pinpoint. Well, she's between things right now, my mother said carefully, but she's very talented with computers. I see. Judge Richardson's voice was carefully neutral. And she's living. She's figuring things out. From across the table, Emma was watching this conversation with barely concealed horror. David's mother was studying me like I was a particularly unpleasant specimen. Perhaps after dinner, we could have a chat. Judge Richardson said to me directly, I might know of some opportunities. For someone with your background, the condescension in his voice was surgical in its precision. He was offering charity publicly, in front of the entire table, making it clear that he was the kind of man who helped the less fortunate, even when they were related to his new daughter-in-law. That's very kind, I said quietly. Emma looked like she wanted to disappear under the table. The conversation moved on, but the damage was done. I was officially the family charity case, the object of pity from my sister's new family, the sister who'd had so much potential, but somehow managed to waste it all. During the dancing, Emma pulled me aside. Amanda, I need to ask you something. Her voice was tight, controlled. David's parents are worried about you. Worried how? They think you might be using drugs, mean your appearance, your behavior, the fact that you won't talk about work or where you're living. I stared at her. Do you think I'm using drugs? She looked away. I don't know what to think anymore. You've been secretive for years. You miss family events. You won't let anyone visit you. You show up looking like she gestured at my outfit like this, and you'd rather I not show up at all. That's not what I said, but it's what you meant. Emma's composure cracked slightly. Do you have any idea how hard this is for me? Do you know what David's family thinks? His father is a federal judge. His mother sits on the boards of 3 charities. They're connected, important people. And then there's my sister, who looks like she's been sleeping under bridges. Maybe I have been. Emma's face went white. Amanda, Please tell me you're not serious. I looked at her, this woman who shared my DNA but understood nothing about my life, and made a decision. I need to use the restroom, I said. I walked into the house past the caterers and wedding coordinators, past the displays of family photos and expensive art. I found a quiet room, a study lined with law books and family portraits, and made a phone call. Collins here. The voice was crisp, professional. Sir, it's Bennett. I need a favor. Amanda, you're supposed to be on leave. I am, but I need a car, something official, and maybe a uniform. There was a pause. Is everything all right? Family situation, sir. I need to make an impression. Another pause. Director Collins had been my handler for 8 years. He knew me well enough to hear what I wasn't saying. How official? As official as you can make it. Give me an hour. I hung up and rejoined the reception. The band was playing something slow and romantic. Emma and David were dancing, surrounded by their beautiful, successful friends and family. I sat at the family table, picking at my dessert, watching my sister live the life she'd always wanted. An hour and 10 minutes later, a black SUV with government plates pulled into the circular driveway. I excused myself and walked to the front of the house. The driver was someone I recognized from Fort Meade. Agent Morrison from Transportation. He handed me a garment bag and a briefcase. Compliments of the director, he said. He said to tell you that your security detail will be here in 20 minutes. Security detail. Morrison smiled. His words, if Agent Bennett is going to blow her cover, she might as well do it right. I changed in the guest bathroom. The uniform was perfect. Navy blue blazer with the NSA seal, rank insignia indicating senior executive service, the civilian equivalent of a brigadier general. My credentials were in the briefcase, along with some official-looking documents that I didn't bother to read. When I looked in the mirror, I saw the person I really was, for the first time in 3 years, around my family. Amanda Bennett, Senior Cyber Operations Specialist, National Security Agency. The woman had spent the last 18 years protecting American interests in ways that would never make the evening news. I walked back to the reception just as dinner was ending. The change in my appearance was so dramatic that several people actually gasped. My mother's mouth fell open. Emma stopped mid-conversation, her wine glass frozen halfway to her lips. But it was Judge Robertson's reaction that satisfied me most. His face went through the same emotions I'd seen on Emma's at the engagement party. Surprise, confusion, and then a dawning realization that something was very wrong with his assumptions. I walked to the family table and sat down, placing my credentials on the white tablecloth where everyone could see them. Sorry, I said to the table at large. Work called. Judge Richardson picked up my credentials with shaking fingers. His face went pale as he read them. Your NSA Senior Executive Service, I confirmed. Level 15. I manage cyber threat operations for the Eastern European desk. The table went silent. Emma looked like she might faint. The computer work, my mother said weakly. You said you worked with computers. I do. I track international cyber threats, dismantle terrorist networks, and occasionally prevent small wars. The secretiveness, the missed holidays, the inability to talk about work. It's called operational security. David's mother had taken my credentials from her husband and was reading them with growing horror. You're a senior government official for 18 years, but you've been— Emma's voice was barely a whisper. You've been homeless, struggling. You said I never said anything. You assumed, and I let you assume. In my line of work, having family think you're a failure is actually perfect. Cover. Judge Richardson cleared his throat. The security clearance level listed here is higher than yours was when you were on the federal bench. I finished. Yes. Emma stood up abruptly, knocking over her chair. I need some air. I followed her to the edge of the lawn where the reception faded into the sound of ocean waves. She was crying, her makeup running, her perfect wedding day dissolving around her. How could you do this to me? She whispered. Do what? Let me humiliate myself. Let me tell people you were a homeless drug addict. Let me treat you like a charity case. You chose to do those things. I never asked you to, but you let me for years, Amanda. Years. Do you have any idea how mortified I am right now? I looked at my sister, really looked at her. The golden child who'd had everything handed to her, who'd sailed through life on charm and privilege, who'd never had to fight for anything or prove herself to anyone. Do you have any idea how mortified I was? I asked quietly, listening to you tell David's mother that I peaked in college, that I was too stupid to function in the real world. that I was probably using drugs. Emma's face crumpled. I didn't mean you did mean it. You believed it. All of you did. But why didn't you tell us? Why did you let us think? Because my job requires it. Because operational security isn't optional. Because sometimes protecting your country means sacrificing your personal relationships. I paused. And because none of you ever asked what? You never asked if I was okay. You never asked if there was more to the story. You saw what you expected to see. And it was easier to believe I was a failure than to consider that maybe, just maybe, there were things about my life you didn't understand. Emma was sobbing now, her perfect wedding dress stained with tears and mascara. Behind us, I could see the reception continuing, but several people were looking in our direction. What happens now? She whispered. I thought about it. Now you go back to your wedding. You dance with your husband. You cut the cake. You take your pictures. And tomorrow you figure out how to live with the fact that you spent years treating your sister like garbage because you couldn't see past your own assumptions. Amanda, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I believed her. But sorry doesn't undo years of humiliation and dismissal. Sorry doesn't erase the things said at family gatherings, the pitying looks, the casual cruelty of people who think they're better than you. I know you are, I said, but sorry doesn't change what happened. I turned to walk back to the house, but Emma grabbed my arm. Please don't leave like this. It's my wedding day. I looked at her, this woman who'd been my sister, my rival, my judge and jury for 37 years. She looked smaller somehow, diminished by the weight of her own assumptions. You're right, I said. It is your wedding day, and I wouldn't want to ruin it any more than I already have. I walked back to the reception, said goodbye to my parents, who looked like they were still processing what they'd learned, and collected my things. As I was leaving, Judge Richardson approached me. Agent Bennett, he said formally, I owe you an apology. You don't owe me anything. I do. I made assumptions based on incomplete information. In my profession, that's inexcusable. I studied him. He looked genuinely remorseful, but more than that, he looked rattled. A federal judge discovering he'd condescended to a senior intelligence official was probably having a very uncomfortable evening. Judge Richardson, I said, can I ask you something? Of course. If I had shown up tonight in this uniform with these credentials visible, how would you have treated me? He considered the question seriously, with respect as a colleague, as someone whose service to the country deserved recognition. And because I showed up in jeans and a hoodie, his face flushed. I assumed you were someone who needed help. So my worth as a person was determined entirely by my appearance and your assumptions about my circumstances. He had no answer for that. Judge Richardson, I've spent 18 years serving my country in ways that most people will never know about. I've sacrificed relationships, financial opportunities, and apparently family connections to do a job that keeps Americans safe. But tonight, because I looked poor and troubled, you offered me charity instead of respect. I paused, letting that sink in. I don't tell you this to make you feel worse. I tell you this because you have a daughter, Emma's age, and someday she might show up somewhere looking like she's struggling. I hope the people she encounters see her as more than her appearance suggests. Judge Richardson nodded slowly. You're right, and I'll remember that. I left him standing there and walked to the government SUV where Agent Morrison was waiting. How did it go? He asked as we pulled away from the estate. I thought about Emma crying in her wedding dress, about my parents' shocked faces, about Judge Richardson's uncomfortable realization that he'd spent the evening condescending to someone who outranked him in every way that mattered. Mission accomplished, I said. 3 months later, I got a call from my mother. She was hesitant, careful, like she was talking to someone she didn't quite know how to approach. Amanda, honey, Emma would like to have lunch with you. To talk about what? About everything about the wedding. About the things she said. She's been seeing a therapist. I was sitting in my real office at Fort Meade, looking out at the parking lot full of unmarked government vehicles, surrounded by computers that monitored threats most people couldn't imagine. Mom, I said, can I ask you something? Of course. All those years when you thought I was struggling, homeless, maybe using drugs, did you ever once think to yourself, this doesn't sound like the Amanda I raised? There was a long pause. I don't know, she said finally. I wanted to believe it wasn't true, but the evidence seemed so clear. You were secretive. You missed things. You wouldn't let us help. The evidence seemed clear, I repeated. Yes, Mom, I graduated summa laude from MIT. I had job offers from Google, Microsoft, Apple. I was recruited by the NSA as a sophomore. Did you really think someone with that background would just suddenly become a homeless drug addict for no reason? Another pause, longer this time when you put it that way. No, it doesn't make sense. But it was easier to believe than to trust me when I said I was fine but couldn't talk about my work. Amanda, we didn't know about the security clearance. We didn't know about the classification issues. No, but you knew me, or you should have. I could hear my mother crying softly on the other end of the line. I'm sorry, honey. We failed you. I failed you. Yes, I said. You did. It wasn't cruel. It was just honest. Will you have lunch with Emma? She asked. I considered it. Emma had sent me 3 letters since the wedding, each more apologetic than the last. She'd filed for divorce 2 weeks after the honeymoon. Apparently, the marriage hadn't survived the revelation that her husband's family were the kind of people who judged worth by appearance and circumstance. Maybe, I said, but not because I'm ready to forgive her, because I want to see if she's learned anything. That's fair. And Mum, next time someone you love seems to be struggling, maybe try asking them what's really going on, instead of making assumptions. I will, I promise. I hung up and went back to work. On my screen was intelligence about a cyber attack being planned against American infrastructure, the kind of thing that, if successful, could black out power grids and shut down hospitals. By the end of the day, I'd identified the threat, located the perpetrators, and coordinated with international partners to shut down the operation. It was a Tuesday. Emma and I never did have that lunch. She sent one more letter, and then she stopped. I heard through family channels that she'd moved to Seattle, started over in environmental law, and was apparently doing well. I hope she is. I genuinely do. But I also hope she remembers the lesson from her wedding day, that people are more than they appear to be, and that assumptions can be the cruelest form of judgment. As for me, I'm still at NSA, still protecting American interests in ways that will never make headlines. My family knows what I do now, but they don't really understand it. That's okay. Understanding isn't required for respect. And sometimes when I'm having a particularly difficult day, when the weight of classified knowledge and operational security feels too heavy, I think about the look on Judge Richardson's face when he realized he'd been offering charity to someone who spent her days preventing international incidents. It wasn't revenge exactly. It was just the truth revealed at the right moment to people who had earned the revelation through their own assumptions and cruelty. The truth has its own power. Sometimes that's enough.